Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with part 2 of the Historical Jesus and Mythical Christ, a lecture by Gerald Massey. So much for the historical Jesus, and now for the mythical Christ. Here we can tread on firmer ground. The mythical Messiah was always born of a virgin mother, a factor unknown in natural phenomena, and one that cannot be historical, one that can only be explained by means of mythos, and those conditions of primitive sociology which are mirrored in mythology and preserved in theology. The Virgin Mother has been represented in Egypt by the maiden queen, Mut-Imua, the future mother of Amenhotep III, some 16 centuries BC, who impersonated the eternal virgin that produced the eternal child. 4 consecutive scenes reproduced in my book are found portrayed upon the innermost walls of the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Luxor, which was built by Amenhotep III, a pharaoh of the 17th dynasty. The first scene on the left-hand side shows the god Thoth, the lunar Mercury, the annunciator of the gods, in the act of hailing the Virgin Queen and announcing to her that she is to give birth to the coming son. In the next scene, the god Neph, in conjunction with Hathor, gives the new life. This is the Holy Ghost or Spirit that causes the Immaculate Conception. Neph being the spirit by name in Egyptian. The natural effects are made apparent in the virgin's swelling form. Next, the mother is seated on the midwife's stool, and the newborn child is supported in the hands of one of the nurses. The 4th scene is that of adoration. Here the child is enthroned, receiving homage from the gods and gifts from men. Behind the deity Neph, on the right, 3 spirits, the 3 magi or kings of the legend, are kneeling and offering presents with their right hand and life with their left. The child thus announced, incarnated, born, and worshipped was the pharaonic representative of the Aten sun in Egypt, the god Adon of Syria, and Hebrew Adonai, the child Christ of the Aten cult, the miraculous conception of the ever-virgin mother, personated by Mut-Imua as mother of the only child and representative of the divine mother of the youthful sun god. These scenes, which were mythical in Egypt, have been copied or reproduced as historical in the canonical Gospels, where they stand like 4 cornerstones to the historic structure and prove that the foundations are mythical. Jesus was not only born of the mythical motherhood, his descent on the maternal side is traced in accordance with the origin of the mythical Christ. The Virgin was also called the harlot because she represented the pre-monogamic stage of intercourse, and Jesus descends from 4 forms of the harlot: Thamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba, each of whom is a form of the stranger in Israel and is not a Hebrew woman. Such history, however, does not show that illicit intercourse was the natural mode of the divine descent, nor does it imply unparalleled human profligacy. It only proves the mythos. In human sociology, the son of the mother precedes the father as son of the woman who was a mother but not a wife. This character is likewise claimed for Jesus, who is made to declare that he was earlier than Abraham, who was the typical great father of the Jews. Whether considered to be mythical or historical, Jesus states emphatically that he existed before Abraham was. This is only possible to the mythical Christ, who precedes the Father as son of the Virgin Mother, and we shall find it so throughout. All that is non-natural and impossible as human history is possible, natural, and explicable as mythos. It can be explained by the mythos because it originated in that which alone accounts for it. For it comes to this at last. The more hidden the meaning in the gospel history, the more satisfactorily it is explained by the mythos. And the more mystical the Christian doctrine, the more easily can it be proven to be mythical. The birth of Christ is astronomical. The birthday is determined by the full moon of Easter. This can only occur every 19 years, as we have illustrated by the epoch or golden number of the prayer book. Understand me, Jesus the Christ can only have a birthday or resurrection once in 19 years in accordance with the Metonic cycle, because his parents are the sun and moon, and those appear in the earliest known representation of man upon the cross. This proves the astronomical and non-human nature of the birth itself, which is identical with that of the full moon of Easter in Egypt. Cassina, the French astronomer, has determined the fact that the date assigned for the birth of Christ is an astronomical epoch in which the middle conjunction of the moon with the sun happened the 24th March at 1:30 o'clock in the morning at the meridian of Jerusalem, the very day of the middle equinox. The following day, the 25th, was the birth of the Incarnation, according to Augustine, but the date of birth according to Clement Alexandria. For two birth dates are assigned to Jesus by the Christian fathers, one at the winter solstice and the other at the vernal equinox. These, which cannot both be historical, are based on the two birthdays of the double Horus in Egypt. Plutarch tells us that Isis was delivered of Horus, the child, about the time of the winter solstice, and that the festival of the second or adult Horus followed the vernal equinox. Hence the solstice and spring equinox were both assigned to the one birth of Jesus by the Christolators. And again, that which is impossible as human history is the natural fact in relation to the two Horuses, the dual form of the solar god in Egypt. And here, in passing, we may point out the astronomical nature of the crucifixion. The Gospel according to John brings on a tradition so different from that of the Synoptics as to invalidate the human history of both. The Synoptics say that Jesus was crucified on the 15th of the month of Nisan. John affirms that it was on the 14th of the month. This serious rift runs through the very foundation. As human history, it cannot be explained, but there is an explanation possible which, if accepted, proves the mythos. The crucifixion, or crossing, was and still is determined by the full moon of Easter. This, in the lunar reckoning, would be on the 14th in a month of 28 days. In the solar month of 30 days, it was reckoned to occur on the 15th of the month. Both unite and the rift closes in proving the crucifixion to have been astronomical, just as it was in Egypt, where the two dates can be identified. Plutarch also tells us how the Mithric cult had been particularly established in Rome about the year 70 BC, and Mithras was fabled as having been born in a cave. Wherever Mithras was worshipped, the cave was consecrated as his birthplace. The cave can be identified, and the birth of the Messiah in the cave, no matter under what name he was born, can be definitely dated. The cave of Mithras was the birthplace of the sun in the winter solstice, when this occurred on the 25th of December in the sign of the sea goat, with the vernal equinox in the sign of the ram. Now the Akkadian name of the 10th month, that of the sea goat, which answers roughly to our December. The 10th by name is Abba Udyu. That is, the cave of light, the cave of rebirth for the sun in the lowest depth of the solstice, figured as the cave of light. This cave was continued as the birthplace of Christ. You will find it in all the Gospels of the infancy. And Justin Martyr says, Christ was born in the stable and afterwards took refuge in the cave. He likewise vouches for the fact that Christ was born on the same day that the sun was reborn in Stabulo Algais, or in the stable of Aljassa. Now the cleansing of this stable was the sixth labor of Heracles, his first being in the sign of the lion, and Justin was right. The stable and cave are both figured in the same celestial sign. But mark this. The cave was the birthplace of the solar Messiah from the year 2410 to the year 255 BC, at which later date the solstice passed out of the sea goat into the sign of the archer, and no Messiah, whether called Mithras, Adon, Tammuz, Horus, or Christ, could have been born in the cave of Abba Udyu, or the stable of Aljassa. on the 25th of December after the year 255 BC. Therefore, Justin had nothing but the mythic tradition of the bygone birthday to prove the birth of the historical Christ 255 years later. In their mysteries, the Sarsia celebrated the birth of the babe in the cave or subterranean sanctuary, from which the priest issued and cried, "The Virgin hath brought forth. The light is about to begin to grow again," on the mother night of the year. And the Saraceni were not supporters of historical Christianity. The birthplace of the Egyptian Messiah at the Vernal Equinox was figured in Apta, or Apta, the corner, but Apta is also the name of the crib and the manger. Hence, the child born in Apta was said to be born in a manger, and this Apta, as crib or manger, is the hieroglyphic sign of the solar birthplace. Hence, the Egyptians exhibited the babe in the crib or manger in the streets of Alexandria. The birthplace was indicated by the closure of the equinox as it passed from sign to sign. It was also pointed out by the star in the east. When the birthplace was in the sign of the bull, Orion was the star that rose in the east to tell when the young sun god was reborn. Hence it is called the Star of Horus. That was then the star of the three kings who greeted the babe. For the three kings is still a name of the three stars in Orion's belt. Here we learn that the legend of the three kings is at least 6,000 years old. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much. This is the Holy Ghost or Spirit that causes the